This is going to be a big night, and let's get into it because we have got a lot to cover, including, as I said, the big energy forum the Albanese government in Sydney held today that could have been our off-ramp from high power prices and rolling blackouts, but which, on the face of it, looks like it is set to lock in higher power prices and lower reliability forever. Now, let me explain. A wise man, far wiser than me, once said that the definition of insanity was doing the same thing over and over and expecting different results. That man was, or is at least thought to have been, Albert Einstein. I wonder what he would have made of modern-day Australia then. Because if the definition of insanity is to keep repeating the same mistake over and over, then surely there is a particular form of Australian blindness that makes us be unable to look at what's going on elsewhere in the world, see the trends, read the tea leaves, know what is coming here, and then comprehensively still fail to act. Now, let's talk about energy and climate, all the things we are supposed to be doing to save the planet, and then check out how they're working out in other countries, eh? Like, let's say, Germany, which tried to phase out its nuclear plants and go green with renewables, and which is now, according to the Financial Times, rationing hot water, dimming streetlights, and shutting community pools to cope with its energy crunch. Oh yeah, they're also burning a lot more lignite brown coal again, too. Great for the planet, this makes sense. Or take Sri Lanka for another example, a country which thought that it could print as much money as it wanted and not tempt the inflation genie out of the bottle, while at the same time making all its farmers go organic, increasing their costs and cutting production. Well, as you might have guessed, predictable hilarity, or rather tragedy, ensued. The government and the currency have both collapsed. They can't grow enough rice to eat or tea to sell overseas for foreign exchange, and the country is now dead broke. And then there's the case of the Netherlands, which we talked about last night. There, the supposedly center-right government has signed up to ambitious climate goals that have included not only carbon and nitrogen emissions, forcing farmers to use less fertilizer, thus producing less food, and even cull their herds, to slash their greenhouse gases. So, what are we doing here in Australia? Are we learning from these examples? Are we steering away from ambitious net zero targets? Are we redefining, as some countries in Europe have done, nuclear and gas as green power sources? Nope. Instead, we are doubling down on net zero, including reducing our greenhouse gases by 43% by 2030. That's just 7.5 years from now. Have a look at what Anthony Albanese had to say about this today in Sydney.
We have indeed already submitted our more ambitious 2030 NDC of 43%, up from the previous 26 to 28%. That will mean that renewables are 82% of the national energy market by 2030. The good news is that the modelling shows we'll create 604,000 new jobs while we're doing it. We'll have $52 billion at least of private sector investment facilitated by that policy.
Jobs, investment, who can argue with that? Love his optimism, but what he's talking about essentially means tripling our renewable generation capacity at some untold cost, and even if we were prepared to pay it, where do we get the workers to make it happen? Look, you are seeing around the world countries backing off their greenhouse targets because they realize if they don't, they will devastate their economies and their manufacturing sectors. But here in Australia, we are not hearing any of it. Even as the energy conference held today in Sydney was warned that the world was heading into a global energy crisis. At the conference, the head of the International Energy Agency, a fellow named Fatih Birol, said that we are, quote, in the middle of the first global energy crisis. Yet, and riddle this one for me, at the same time, he reiterated his belief that countries like Australia should keep accelerating the move to renewables. And of course, while we do that, we refuse to countenance nuclear because it is too expensive, even though the planet is supposedly at stake here. Who could forget the immortal words of Chris Bowen?
Nuclear is the most expensive form of energy. We have a cost of living crisis, energy prices going through the roof, and what's their big bright idea? They say, let's have the most expensive form of energy we can possibly think of.
But of course, nuclear energy is always on, unlike solar or wind power. Anyway, all of this is the same logic of the United States energy policy under Joe Biden, which has from day one of his administration been trying to kill off the fossil fuel industry, while at the same time demanding that in the short term, petroleum producers generate more petroleum to lower their prices. At the Energy Forum today, U.S. Energy Secretary Jennifer Granholm said, quote, "We want to make sure we are not, as a nation, under the thumb of petro-dictators and under the thumb of those who don't share our values, and under the thumb of those who would like to control aspects of the supply chain." Well, of course, if we had nuclear here, we'd have none of those problems either, because you know what? All the uranium is under the ground. But, you know, it's interesting about Jennifer Granholm, because she once sang in a rap video all about banning petrol.
Gasoline, gasoline, you're driving me insane. Gasoline, gasoline, the world's aflame.
Sorry to do that to you. Jennifer Granholm was also recently eviscerated on Capitol Hill in Washington, D.C. by Representative Josh Hawley when she claimed that high petrol prices in that country were all down to Vladimir Putin.
Oh, nonsense. With all due respect, Madam Secretary, that's utter nonsense. In January of 2021, the average gas price in my state was $2.07. 8 months later, long before Vladimir Putin invaded Ukraine, that price was up over 30%, and it has been going up consistently since.
So we can see what's coming here. Higher prices, the death of manufacturing, yet we continue to go down this road. Insanity, as Einstein would say.